Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Flynn, and I'm here with
Scott Lang.
And we are the Band Dads. Here to bring you a podcast about something that we care very dearly about, which is music education and band.
Some of you are here because you want to learn about all things band. Some of you are here because you want to see a train wreck. And the answer is yes to both of those. We don't care why you're here. We're going to answer all the questions. We're going to say the things you're thinking. We're going to debunk all the myths.
Yep. This is the Band Dads Podcast.
The podcast by and for confused band parents.
Nice. You said the tagline. How's the road treating you, Scott Lang, by the way?
I'm not going to, I don't want to disparage any particular mode of transportation. I don't.
Okay.
But if you were to fly American Airlines,
okay,
and you were to have 15 flights and 14 of them were delayed by multiple hours.
Wow.
14 of 15, Chris.
That's not a real airline.
I have never had to like, oh my God, I'm not going to make a workshop and run to another airline and buy a ticket.
Yeah.
Never in 22 years have I had to sprint across a terminal, buy a ticket on a separate airline to get to a workshop. It happened twice in 1 week.
That's really unfortunate. I almost feel like I need to go back to, what was it? One of our first episodes where I did the hold up. And I want to be like, wait a minute, think about what Scott just said. 14 out of 15 flights were delayed.
14 out of 15 flights, and they were all mechanical. All mechanical. Then I had one flight on time, and then my 16th flight was delayed this last week because of weather in Chicago.
You know, I'm sure you're very delightful in those situations, too. I'm sure you're a pleasure to deal with.
Yeah. Well, on my best of days, my family calls me Travel Scott, and they don't like Travel Scott.
That's not a positive.
But I will say, I've learned to roll with it. I don't get upset, and I certainly don't get upset at people.
Okay. Well,
that's a fair
point. That's
if you do lean your seat back into me, I am going to kick it on a regular basis just to make sure you. So if you see
that's your space too.
If you see me on a flight, first of all, don't recline, and number two, I'm on the same flight as you. Chances are it's going to be delayed.
Has this ever happened to you? Because I've seen this, I think, on posts, and I always wonder online if it would ever happen to me when I fly. Have you ever had somebody like take their shoes off and like put their feet up on the back of your arm?
No.
I've seen this on posts, and I'm like, I can't imagine what I would do if someone's foot like came up next to me.
It would not be. Yeah, folks. So we're gonna have an interesting thought discussion today. We are in the no man's land of, because we have the longest season in the country. We are tomorrow starts week 6 of marching band, and we still have 6 more to go before our first competition.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Most people's marching band season is 12 weeks. Ours is 12 weeks to our first competition.
Gotcha.
And then it's just, so anyway.
Even DCI is done at this point, and we're still waiting.
They just gave up. They just got tired and quit. They're like, okay, that's enough marching.
Yeah.
So we're gonna circle back to DCI in a second. Okay.
All right.
Is your wife a good cook?
Yes.
Okay. Would you prefer it if she could cook one thing extraordinarily well or a lot of things fairly well?
Wow, that's probably a tougher question than you think, only because I don't get sick of things that I really like. I guess I'd have to probably say the latter. I guess just for the sake of investment in variety and not getting bored of something, I guess I would say the latter. I'd rather she be okay at a multitude of things.
Okay, would you rather that your son had a skill set to fix one thing on a car? I can do a transmission on a 57 Chevelle. That's all I can do. Or would you rather them not be as experienced on a transmission of a 57 Chevelle, but be able to tinker around and get a lot of stuff done?
Probably the tinkering around would benefit me bigger long term. So I would go with the tinkering for sure.
Okay, so here's the gig. When is enough going to be enough in marching band?
So, okay. How does that apply to what we've just, so put that analogy together with what you just asked me. How do we get there?
Okay, for those who don't know, 30 years ago, and probably I would say it was pretty close to 30, maybe even 35 years ago, most bands did 4 or 5 different halftime shows during a season.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And as we left the primary purpose of a marching band from being what I would call spirit-centric or football game-centric to competition-centric,
right?
We've evolved the art form to the point where we take one thing, one very specific thing, and we perfect it.
Okay.
And so if you think about it, if we take one recipe and perfect it, but that's all we do, if we can fix one thing perfectly, but that's all we can fix, what good are we? What is the experience that we're providing? So, folks, I wanted to say this is just a thought exercise. It's not that I'm advocating we go back to the high stepping and 5 different shows. We've got a little breathing space because we start so early that I want to use this. I want to use this time. So I want you to ask yourselves, folks, when is enough gonna be enough? My name's Scott Lang,
Chris Flynn,
and we're the Band Dads.
So let me ask you a question then. Before we even get into that level of it, do you agree with the transition in the first place, moving from halftime shows and support and pageantry to competition? Do you think that was a good move to begin with for the activity, or was that the beginning of the downfall of it?
That's a really good question. And I would say, I hate to take the cop out, but it's both. I think what was great is it took the art form and it challenged kids at a much higher level, physically, musically, visually.
Sure.
But I also think it took the activity down a path that was never designed for. I mean, we're taking a Phillips screwdriver and trying to like saw wood with it.
Yeah.
It was the activity of marching band, of walking around and making pictures outside, was never designed to be a competitive event. And there's nothing wrong with turning into a competitive event, but that's not what it was designed to be. And fundamentally, it changed the way we rehearse. It changed the way we schedule. It changed the way we budget. It changed the way we travel. It changed the instruments we use.
True.
It fundamentally change the purpose of the activity from what it was originally designed to do.
So that's a fair point. And I guess when I think about it from just really, I guess me as a parent, and I look at, I don't know, how my kid is doing and the activity that they're doing, I guess I appreciate the competitive side because I feel like it gives them importance that's more than just supporting a football team, if that makes any sense. Like, I think the work they put in and what they do is worthwhile enough for them to have their own forum to display the skill set that they have versus people just feeling like they're there to support this other activity. And maybe I'm skewed a little bit because, again, we have an incredibly successful football team. Again, they've been at the championship 2 years in a row. They won last year. Watch us
on ESPN in 2 weeks. We're the opening game of the season.
Yeah, like number 18 in the country, maybe better by now, 15 in the country. And yeah, our opening game on our home campus, by the way. So maybe you'll see Scott and myself on ESPN that night. But they're coming to broadcast.
See us on ESPN. Game. You think they're going to, hey, let's zoom in on the Band Dads.
Yeah. Why wouldn't they? What do you mean? I plan on sending an email before they show up. I'm going to stop by the production truck.
You're just going to swing by the booth and say, drop in. What are you doing here? I'm one of the Band Dads.
I'm sorry. You didn't recognize me. That's okay. Here's who I am, just so you know.
By the way, which I have said they should do a narration for the halftime shows and they should bring in a specialist because we had people on the field for the actual football game.
Sure.
But, okay, let's go back. Let's get back to the focus.
Okay.
I want you to think for a second, but there's a downside to that. I agree with the competitive activity, but Chris, would you agree that because of the level of demand, time, commitment, physical and otherwise, that some kids don't participate in the activity if we're less rigorous? Now, keep in mind, when it was less rigorous, we were rehearsing inside the school day.
Yeah.
We weren't memorizing music.
Yeah.
It was a part of your class day.
Yeah.
Do you believe that it's actually repelling some kids away from the activity?
I'd say it'd be hard. It'd be naive to think it doesn't, for sure. It's a very difficult. Now, at the same time, again, we're not in an environment where we are so competitive that we're cutting people in our band. We don't have that. There's no real tryout. There's no audition, but
kids have walked away because they just said this is too much.
Yes, and I would say this is one of those things I reflect on every year, even as a parent and now a booster president, whatever. I do look at the names that didn't come back. Right, this is my daughter's senior year. I look at the kids that maybe she's marched with previous years, almost all the way up until this year, and I see them not there this year, and it kind of makes me wonder why. But the things you're saying are absolutely true in that regard.
So, and then I think you have to ask yourself, the second question is redesign the activity, fundamentally changing the activity, putting a square peg into a round hole, and that it's repelling kids. But I also think you need to ask yourself, are we missing learning opportunities?
Okay.
And so, but think about it this way.
Yeah.
There are different phases to a season. There's the band camp phase where I got to figure out how to walk and talk and chew gum.
Yeah.
And then we take it to a level where we're down to the most finite and minutia of details to get the show clean.
Right.
But if we stopped at 9 or 6 weeks and then did a whole new show and we had to get back to the basics again, and you did that 3 or 4 times a season, you're getting 3 or 4 more times the literature. You're getting 3 or 4 more times a drill.
Interesting way to look at it. Yeah.
You're getting 3 or 4 more times the music. So are we missing learning opportunities because we're taking something to such a modicum of detail that we're missing the bigger learning opportunity.
Yeah, I would tell you that from at least, I don't know that I can completely accurately answer that question as a parent, right? I have spent enough time and listened to the feedback of enough music educators at this point that I'm pretty confident a lot of music educators, especially those that don't focus on marching band, absolutely feel that way. They do feel often that marching band can almost be a detriment to the music learning side of things because, to your point, it completely consumes the world of that musician for that period of time. So that's all they're focused on. So if they're really not learning or developing a new skill set that pushes them, now we know it's pushing them physically and other things, but you have said yourself that the actual music they play is generally what level? Not high school level, right? It's generally what level?
The competitive bands are playing high school level literature.
Okay. But in a way that a good musician's probably not being pushed in the way that they necessarily could be in another ensemble. Is that fair to say? Or am I?
Oh, yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
It's, time spent, time invested in what you yield on a marching band it's 40% music and 60% something visual, whether it's tossing a flag or walking around or stick technique or visual. So they definitely, if they weren't doing marching band, would be getting more of a musical experience. Now, I'm not saying that's better. And folks, again,
agreed.
I'm not advocating. Right. I'm not advocating, but I do think it's really important to realize we have shifted the actual fundamental basis for this activity that was never meant to be competitive, that was never meant to be before or after school, was never meant to be scored, was never meant to have money spent on it. And think about it, and we've turned it into something it was never designed to be without changing the fundamental nature of how we operate. Let me explain.
Okay.
We didn't say, well, we're going competitive. Let's quintuple the budget for the band.
Okay.
Nope. We said, go competitive and figure it out. You have to go fundraise.
Yeah.
We didn't say, hey, go competitive and we're going to build you a facility so it can be optimal. Nope. We've got the same facility.
Use what you got. Yeah. Okay.
And people don't realize, a band director gets an extra duty stipend for all their extra duty stipends. It was never designed for marching band. So when I got my extra duty stipend, they'd say, that's for marching band. I'd say, no, it isn't. Marching band used to be inside the school day. It was a part of my contract.
Right.
We moved it to outside. It's for Friday nights.
Yeah.
It's for concerts.
Yeah.
The actual activity of marching band is unfunded for most music educators.
Right.
They're doing it for free.
Yeah.
And they're having to raise money that could have been spent on a concert band instrument or a concert band piece or commissioned work. And they're spending it on activity that it was never designed to be a part of the public school system.
It is crazy for me to think that, again, it just as being more involved in the boosters and in the fundraising and all that stuff, looking at what we fundraise to operate the band, which is a lot of money, don't get me wrong.
And the subject of our next podcast.
There you go. When we put it in the perspective, to your point, of where that money could go elsewhere, it does blow my mind a little bit because just the cost of what the kids have in their hands is so expensive. To your point, so this is a whole other detriment, I guess, which is we're spending the money on these other things, but could we take this money then and invest it in actual physical instruments, which means that our kids wouldn't be playing our instruments that are 10, 15, 20 years old sometimes?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've seen our inventory and I've actually seen it on an Excel spreadsheet and it is probably 75% original to the opening of the school and the school's 22 years old.
Yeah.
So, now, okay. So if we understand we're taking a round peg and put it in a square hole.
Okay.
We're doing it in a facility that it wasn't designed to be done in. We're doing it in a competitive nature that it was never designed to be done in. And we're doing it underfunded, unfunded. And we're doing it with kids it was never designed to be done with because it used to be just your top group. So it'd be your varsity wind ensemble, go outside during that time.
Gotcha.
But let's celebrate all the good that comes with it. We're pushing kids. We're getting kids activity out during the time. Okay. But then you have to ask your question, when is enough?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I mean, when I marched, it was 25 pages of drill. Now it's 80.
The problem is I don't know who answers that question either because the activity being pushed is always coming from an outside party, right? To me, at least the way I see the activity, is not necessarily a band director sitting down and going, this was where we were last year. This is my outcome for these individuals this year. I feel like it's a lot, and maybe that's wrong to say band directors. The activity itself pushes for these groups are able to accomplish this now. So I'm pushing this group of kids to accomplish this too. Does that make sense? Not whether they're capable or
it's internal of the activity, music educates other, but it's not a conscious choice. We're not going, you know what? Let's just take everything, ratchet it up 4% this year, the way a business would. We need growth.
I guess that's my point. The market's determining how those kids are being pushed, not necessarily the program. Does that make any sense? Like it's not. I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but the director themselves is not saying that this is necessarily the objective. They're almost a victim of, again, what the market is dictating the product to be.
Completely agree.
Okay.
When's enough, Chris?
I don't.
Let me ask you this question. I don't want you to think about in terms of our program.
Right.
I want you to think about just the activity. Chris, do you think in 5 years they'll be rehearsing more or less than they do now?
Oh, I mean, I don't know where
We didn't
there's
have
room.
summer chop shops 10 years
I
ago.
was going to say, I don't know where there's room to rehearse more, to be honest with you. That would require more
We start in April. We start the music in May. We start summer chop shops in June.
Yeah.
We hand it out. We take a piece that we did in concert band and we convert it to a marching band piece.
Right.
Do you think we'll be rehearsing more or less 10 years from now?
So I don't know. Okay, here's what I would say.
More drill or less drill?
The way that the trend has been, it makes me think it would be more, but I feel like at some point there has to be some sort of internal conflict within the educators themselves, because we also talked about, we did an episode about their competitive like concert season, right? And the pride that they get from having to take these other ensembles to these smaller competitions, these state competitions where they're judged basically individually on how they teach their kids music, etc. And unless that goes away, there still has to be some balance, doesn't there? Because it's not just...
I don't know. That's my point. Watching DCI, did they play more notes this year than they did 10 years ago?
Man, it seems like every show is like 15 minutes long.
I know. And is it more difficult than it was 15 years ago?
Yeah, for sure.
Are they achieving more drill than they did 15 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are we spending more money than we did 15 years ago?
That's a good question. Are they?
Oh, yeah.
Where were the props this year? I don't know. Anyway, that's a different...
I mean, 15 years ago, we didn't have any of the amplification.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's okay. So that's a good point. And there's actually some really good videos out there. Whether or not, again, there's no opinion here. But the fact is, if you look at the setup, the engineering that takes place now, just to bring that show to the field is insane.
So when is enough?
I don't know.
Enough.
That's a good question.
Is this
a rhetorical question, or are we trying to come up with an actual answer?
I think we should try and come up with that. I do think there are some answers, but
okay.
And then where is that line? And so, and again, this is not. I'm not criticizing any activity, any group. I'm just asking the question. Now we have indoor wins. Isn't that just spring marching band?
Yes.
I mean, so when you're saying, unless we get rid of the State Concert Band Festival, then there are some boundaries. No, there aren't. People are doing spring marching band, and they're not going to the state contest for concert band.
Yeah.
So when do we hand out the music? Like Drum Corps hands out their music in December now. So are we going to start doing that?
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, so again, though, I think some of this goes back to, because I'm going to go back to the conversation about the market, and basically the market dictates it. The customers themselves have to decide that. Now, in this case, though, the customers are not the students. It's the parents. It's us, right? The parents have to be the ones to tolerate the time it takes, the time their kid is going to spend in this activity. But when we talk about it's not funded, the other part of that is the money, right? So the parents are the consumers. They have to decide at what point they feel like they've spent enough money on this thing, just like with any product, right? Or people are upset about the cost of a lot of components and things going up, and they combat that. You say, well, just don't buy them anymore, right? If you don't spend the money at this price, then they'll stop asking, the demand will stop be for this price. So to some extent, is it not up to the parents, I guess, to also start to decide for themselves or to push back? I guess if we feel like we're there already.
So let me ask
they're the consumers at the end of it.
Okay, fair point, Chris. So I'm gonna take your child's high school band.
Okay.
I'm gonna defund it. And you're not going to play custom music. You're going to march custom drill. You're not going to have new uniforms. You're not going to have new instruments. And you're going to go to contest. And how long as a parent are you going to tolerate your kid having a substandard experience compared to other kids that you're seeing every Friday night and every Saturday that are getting that experience?
Well, I don't know. But who's deciding that standard to begin with? Man, we could ask every question on every angle of this. But who gets to decide what that experience is in the first place? I guess what I'm saying
I think the band director gets to decide.
Fair enough.
But then they face external pressures from either parents of, why is our band not competing? Why are we not looking as good? Why are our uniforms older? Why are our instruments, less funded? Why all these things? Or they get it from their administration or even their peer community of, listen, dude, your band's bad. Why?
And I think if we're being honest, we have to acknowledge that that's even the case now, right? There's no question that some programs have different numbers than others because of that reason, right? Parents are specifically seeking out certain programs for their kids because they feel like they get a better experience, right? But then again, that's still perception. It's this experience is better than this one that doesn't have this volume of hours.
Okay, but let me ask you this. Do you think the way it used to operate, it was learn, struggle, perform? repeat, learn, struggle, perform,
Right.
learn, struggle, perform. You do that 3 or 4 sequences in a season. Now it's learn, struggle, perfect, 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 perform.
Perfect the slightest, tiniest adjustment for this
right.
one judge who felt this one way about this one thing.
And I don't know that either you or I can make the decision about which is better, but
Right.
they are different and you learn different things. And as dumb as an analogy it is, if you're only working on 57 Chevelle transmissions, you will be extraordinarily efficient and fast and very good at it and likely sought out after by people who have 57 Chevelle transmissions.
Right.
But if we took a more holistic approach, because I don't know, now athletics probably takes the band approach, which is practice, perfect, 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 perform.
Right. Correct.
But no other subject does that. We don't perfect Unit 4 in geometry all year long till we understand that Pythagorean theorem inside and out, frontwards. No, we give you the basic concept of Pythagorean theorem and you move on. You learn about verbs, you move on. You learn about the Civil War, you move on.
True.
We don't move on. And we're extending it with winter seasons. And by moving summer earlier, we're actually extending the process. So not only did we fundamentally change the whole concept of what this activity was about and put a square peg into a round hole, we did it without the facilities or the funding mechanisms to do it.
Well,
and then we're extending this square peg into a round hole as long as we possibly can. And where does it end?
we don't, to make it worse, I guess, too, we don't even have the structure. You just mentioned we do it the way sports does. That's almost not even true because we don't even do it the way sports does because sports itself is better defined, meaning that
it has
sports
boundaries.
Correct. Sports has an objective outcome of whether it be a score, a win, or a loss based on particular rules that everybody follows, that if you accomplish X, Y, and Z and you are the winner at the end of that contest. Whereas again, ours is still, and this is why you've made the point that it's not, marching band is not technically a sport, because there is the judgment aspect. There's the art, the judgment of the art itself. It's a performing art more than it is a sport. So we make it that much harder on ourselves because we don't even have an objective outcome at the end of the day. We can work our tails off, Scott. We can spend all this money and all these hours, show up to state contest, finish in 10th place. And like, you want the kids after all that work to feel positive about what they've accomplished. And that's the tough part about that is not, this is where the competitive aspect becomes difficult. We all feel like they deserve better. And whether you're second, third, 10th, it doesn't mean you're not as good as first place, other than the subjective opinion of this person who watched the show that particular night. And you don't want your kids, that's the other part of this, is you don't want your kids to be deflated and feel like they didn't get the reward for all of these things that make this difficult in the first place. And I think that's more of the challenge of the competitive side of it too, is do we lose kids for that same reason?
You made a comment when we did an episode with our band director. And I said to you after you made the comment, I said, that may be the most insightful thing I've ever heard you say. Do you remember what the question was? And do you remember what your answer was?
It was actually something similar to what you're talking about right now. You asked me, when is it too difficult?
Right.
Basically, right? And I said, right now, I think it's the perfect amount of difficult to learn the lessons they need to learn.
Okay.
So today I feel like we're there.
But can you agree the natural tendency of competitive activities or the historical track where when I was in band, 20 pages of drill was a lot. When I taught band, 40 pages of drill was a lot. Now 85 pages of drill is pretty normal. If you just looked at the historical trend of achievement, both musically and visually and level of demand, can you see a possibility in which 10 years from now, we're saying it's 110 pages of drill and it's grade 5 music, not grade 4 music? Can you see that trend?
Yes.
So if it's just perfect now, what's it going to be in 10 years? When is enough enough?
Man, it's funny because you're absolutely right. And I love that you're using my own words against me because that's really smart. But I don't know, because at the same time, we've also sat here and we've talked about, and you yourself, again, have made comments about people who kind of sit and be curmudgeons about the development of an activity. And that's really what we're talking about right now, which is, do we want it to pause? Do we think it's perfect now that we don't need to improve on it? Because otherwise, in 10 years, when it gets to that point, we sound like the people that you're talking about, which is, oh, it's too much. I remember when it was this and they didn't have to do this. And
all they're doing is body movement and running around the field. They don't even march in straight lines anymore.
So I guess we want our cake and eat it too at this point. But I do feel like for my child, I feel like the experience that they've had is good where it is now. I don't think it needs to get any more difficult. I don't think they need to take anything more from it. I do feel like I'm satisfied with where the activity is today, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I would tell you, and not to harp on something that doesn't impact a lot of our audience, because as we sit here on August 15th, our kids are in their 6th week of school. I will tell you, I think through no fault of our director, through no fault or choice that he's made, I will tell you, I think we've crossed the line of where the season is unhealthily long. I do.
Okay.
And that's almost every band that's on a year-round calendar. I mean, when you're talking an activity where my band camp would be August 8th or 9th, or if you're on the East Coast on the first day of school, September 10th, your band camp's on August 28th, and the end of your season is middle of October because you got snow on the ground in 2/3 of the country.
Right.
You're in the entirety of your season is 8 weeks, and
right.
you and I are going to go 12 weeks from band camp to our first competition.
Right.
We got another 6 weeks of competitions after that. I will tell you, I think I'm not satisfied with that. I do think it's too long because I think through anyone would do the same thing, because of calendaring, you start your band camp the 2 weeks before school. I think it's an unhealthy duration of time in a single activity with the sole purpose of trying to continually perfect the same thing. I don't know that they're learning any greater lessons. And it's not that I'm against the achievement of trying to achieve perfection. It's the duration of time in which we do it.
Okay.
And we're just a victim of a year-round calendar and, folks, good weather that lets us go into the 3rd week of November this year. That is our state championship.
Yeah.
It's every 7 years. It falls back a week. It fell back this week. So not only did we go to school earlier this year, but the competition's schedule was expanded by 7 days.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so even though I think, we should be a big enough deal for ESPN to invite us on their broadcast in the fall, we know that outside of these recording sessions and us publishing this podcast, that on a day-to-day basis, Scott, I am a what?
Oh, data analyst. Hello. Right. Everybody knows that.
There you go. So when you say what you just said, I start to think about that in that way, because really what you're talking about right now is diminishing returns. And now what you're saying is theory and it's anecdotal. So now I'm wondering, so how do we judge that? How do we make that statement true or false?
I think
we prove that it is in fact too much time, or
I think it's too much.
Or are we just proving that if everybody else had access to the same weather and ability that we have, they would do the same that we do? How do you know?
Both are true.
Okay.
We are spending too much time on it, and everyone else would do it too if they had our calendar.
Okay.
They would make the same choices.
Yeah.
And part of it is pragmatism, because, well, school starts here. I need to move my camp back here.
Yep. But
the other part is, in the band directors, and not ours, but in my own band director perverted mind, more is better, right?
Yeah. If
I can get more rehearsal, I'll be a better band, right? I want to be a better band, so I'll take more rehearsal.
Yeah.
And we don't have any guardrails on the activity. And it's interesting. And I think that's the answer. Is that a commonality of guardrails. And the only group, and I hate to say this, and everyone in this state is thinking, is the only one who's achieved that is Texas. And what they did is they just flat out, the band directors don't get to make the choices. It's run by the athletic organization,
right?
UIL. And they cannot start drill before August 1st.
So Texas is the only one that uses that oversight.
Yes.
Okay.
So they can't start drill. For those who don't know, we've danced around this issue a little bit. There are a couple things Texas does. Number one is they can't start drill before August 1st. The second thing is, if your band is under a certain size, I want to say it's 100 kids, then you can't do a show that exceeds 7 minutes.
Oh yeah, there's limit. Yeah.
And so, think about that, folks. And you think, why? Well, because band directors would be too tempted to reach for too much with too few kids.
Yeah.
So they guardrail.
Okay.
And then the third one is, you can only rehearse 8 hours a week.
Gotcha.
And so they've put guardrails. Now, you can argue for, you can argue against those guardrails, but they have definitive guardrails. And up until, I think, 3 years ago, you could only participate in state championships every other year.
Why is that?
You'd have to ask someone in Texas.
Just curious. Yeah, why Texas?
Some had made the argument that there were too many bands to be able to do it every year.
Okay.
But then other people were like, yeah, but football team can do it every year. We can figure this out. And 3 years ago, they changed the rules. So now you can do it every year.
That's an interesting one. Yeah. So and I think this is, and my daughter and I were talking about this recently. One of the reasons why continuing marching band into college is actually more fun is because the marching band is considered as part of the athletic department, are they not?
Yes.
Right.
So here, the other, I want to clarify a point we just made, which is, no, it wasn't your fault, it's mine. So why state every other year? Here's what the unintended or intended result was. Well, this isn't a state year for us, so I'm not worried about that. I'm not going to spend $40,000 on props. We're not going to state no matter what. I'm not going to spend, a budget on new uniforms. Our state years next year.
That makes a lot of sense.
So the unintended consequence was is the odd years that you weren't eligible for state. You scaled things back.
Gotcha.
And so healthy, unhealthy, intended, not intended. I don't know, but I am telling you, I heard all the time, well, this isn't a state year for us. And so you think about it, and, even just props. What did a prop look like, even 5 years ago? It was something the band dads built, and now they're professional prop building companies.
Yeah.
You hauled everything in a U-Haul. Now we have 18-wheel semi-trailers.
Yeah.
When is enough? So, when is it too much?
Yeah. So to go back to what we were just talking about. So that I think that's one of the reasons why marching band is kind of more fun and exciting in college is because it's part of the athletic department. So it gets funding and it's like included in stuff. Like it gets a different level of respect, I feel like. So if Texas is already kind of doing that, I mean, maybe that is a good thing to explore for other places is to have oversight in that way. Now, again, everybody has to agree that there's one entity, I guess, right, that oversees it. And I know we have 2 circuits here in Arizona, so that could be a challenge.
Most states have multiple circuits.
I was going to say, so that could be the challenge is how do you, I don't know. There's so much
because it's
at
either
stake.
a national circuit that's operating inside your state, or you have multiple circuits. You have a bandmaster circuit and you have an MEA circuit, which is similar to what we have here.
Right. So that, I guess that becomes the challenge is there any way to make that possible other places, or is it just?
I mean, I think it's an interesting question, because I think if you went to a group of band directors, let's say 100 band directors, and you said, do we spend too much money on marching band? I think the general consensus would be yes.
Probably.
If you asked, is the marching band season too long? I think the general consensus would be yes. I think if you asked, is it affecting your home life, work-life balance? The general consensus would be yes. I think if you asked, are we losing kids because the demand is so significant? The general consensus would be yes. But you bring up the question then, okay, well, if these are all the decision makers and they would all agree on these things, why don't they change it?
That's a fair question, decision makers. Why don't you change it?
I don't think there's, maybe I'm crazy, but in my days, I never knew of any band director that said, God, you know what we should do? I think the season's too short. We should extend it. Everyone's like, God, it's too long, but we never did anything to fix it.
Gotcha.
I think we all agreed, God, it's really expensive running a marching band, but we never did anything to fix it.
So do you think the directors would agree with your statement in terms of it being too long in Arizona? Do you think Arizona band directors would agree with your statement? Like, yeah, we should pull it back? I'm just curious.
Yes.
Okay.
And here's the thing, if you're familiar with these things, remember, Texas puts guardrails on things. So they start 4 weeks after we do on August 1st. That's when they start drill.
Right.
They put guardrails on the length of your show. Now, Texas, they do what's called region, area, and state. You have to get out of region to get to area. You got to get out of area to get to state.
Okay.
So it's like a playoff system.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Region is the 3rd week in October. So Texas starts a month later than us, ends a month earlier than us. Who's better?
Okay. However, here's where we have to be honest too about this part of the conversation, though. I've seen, so booster organizations are nonprofit in many cases, right? Nonprofits have to produce financial results. I feel like some of that is made up for in the amount of money that's spent on those programs. There are Texas programs that are spending 6, 7. Oh, I can't believe I just said that. I didn't mean to. Multiple times more what we get to spend on our program. And we talked about this on an episode as well. How money begets success. More money equals more instruction.
And there's no simple answer to this, but they also have more kids participating.
100%.
You go to
That's true too.
You go to a high school in Texas that has 2,000 kids, and they're going to have 240 in the marching band.
I get that.
You go to a program in our state that has 2,000 kids, and there's 40 in the marching band.
I get that.
And so, I'm not saying it's direct or causational, but you can spend multiples of that money when you've got multiples of those kids.
Yeah,
okay. Well,
I don't think it's equivalent. I don't think it's equivalent.
Mr. Data Analyst, if they've got double or triple the kids and you tripled what we spend on our show, it would probably be pretty equivalent.
Not from what I've seen.
If you subtract travel. If you subtract travel.
I don't know, man. I've seen some of these budgets. And then, again, anyway, I don't want to say that they shouldn't be allowed to spend that money if they raise that money and they dedicate that money. I'm just saying that we also can't oversimplify the fact that, and we know we have people that feel this way, money equals success often. So you can shorten the season, but if I can give you better instruction, if I can hire more staff, like if I could literally get that many people in to help develop your band and be better, there's something to be said for that too. I don't want to disregard that part of it.
And we all agree it's this mythical line in the sand, and we don't know if we've crossed it or when we crossed it or how much further across the line we're going to go. But I think we can all agree there is a limit, a healthy limit to the activity. If I said we're going to go from 12 hours a day to 14 hours a day, you'd probably say, God, that's too long. That's not healthy.
I just wonder, though, when we talk about the directors and if they would agree or not, my question again to them would also be, okay, however, if you feel like you could afford to pay double or 3 times the staff you have now to help with your band, do you think you could achieve what you're achieving in less amount of time? I would think they would probably say yes.
Yeah, but I would call that drum corps. I mean, I would say that's a different level experience. Like I don't, and I would say to be fair, there was a time when high school sports was, you want to try football? Give it a shot. You want to try baseball? Give it a shot. And now it's, if you're not in club baseball by the 6th grade, you're not making the high school team. If you don't have a nutritionist at 15, then you're not going to make the varsity football team. I mean,
it's insane.
So marching band is no different in that way than competition. By choosing to go competitive, answer this.
Okay.
By choosing to go competitive, did we fundamentally change and shift the mission from being an educational activity to a competitive activity?
As you've said before, I think it's probably a little bit of both. So I don't think fundamentally necessarily, but is there a pretty strong shift that brought in this different focus that wasn't there before? Yes. So it definitely takes away from the educational side in favor of that. But again, that doesn't mean there isn't also things that are coming from the competitive side of it that are also beneficial.
Do you think, okay, let me ask you this, because I've have this theory. Do you think if we extended our season from where it is now, 15% more, 15% more days, would the bands be 15% better? Yes or no?
My gut says no.
No, because there's a decreasing incremental de-escalation of effect. Like the way the band looks on week 1 to week 4 is a massive improvement. From week 4 to week 8 is a big improvement. Week 8 to week 12 is an improvement. And at week 12, you are who you are. I mean, if you have weak trumpets, 4 more weeks ain't going to fix it.
Change it. Yeah.
If you have a bad guard, 4 more weeks isn't going to change it.
Right.
They're going to be a little less bad. So at what point did we cross the line between educational and competitive?
Yeah. And that's something I would want, again, that's something I would want an educator to give me their
I'm an educator.
On. Okay, well.
I'm giving it to you right now.
I know your opinion. I would love to.
Everyone knows my opinion. We started a podcast so I could tell people my opinion.
Like we know already. But I'd be curious, your point. So because in that way, so let's say there's a particular, you mentioned trumpets, and we'll just use this as an example. If your trumpets can't hit a particular technique very well that's in your show, you're either going to perform it poorly or just going to remove it.
That's correct.
Because you can't be exposed in that way. You can't have them playing it poorly in front of judges.
But if it were, but in concert band, you can't remove it. They'd have to just figure it out or crash and burn. So is there something to be said for that?
So my question would be, again, so let's say we take a month off of the marching band season somewhere. Does that give an educator an opportunity to be able to teach that trumpet a way to ramp up to that technique that they could potentially achieve that same thing successfully, whereas the marching band activity does not allow it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And a way to rephrase it is people always say, well, we spend too much money on marching band. And my answer is, if we eliminated marching band, do you think people would write that check for concert band? No, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, so no, do I think it's precluding the kids from learning something? I would probably say no. I'd say it's the opposite.
Okay.
Because I would say is you are going to put in the time to figure it out. If you can't throw a 4 and catch it, you're just going to keep throwing a 4 until you learn to catch it.
Yeah.
It's mastery of repetition. But there is a diminishing value in that mastery of repetition because you're not moving on to learn how to throw a 5 or how to spin a double or how to play your melodic minor scales.
Yeah.
So I will say, I think a good barometer is when we start losing kids. I think that's a good barometer of when you've crossed the line.
Yeah, no, it's hard to argue that. Attrition is a hard thing to argue, man. If you really love it and you want to be a part of it, you come back and keep doing it, right? I mean,
I do think though. So, okay, let me ask you this: would you be in favor of starting date guardrails as a band parent? Yes or no?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Would you be in favor of length of show guardrails?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Would you be in favor of number of rehearsal hour guardrails?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. Would you be in favor of competitive guardrails in terms of a score should not be below this if a kid's out there doing something, or above this?
Probably.
Okay. Would you be in favor of funding guardrails?
Yes.
Because when we make an activity as difficult as we do, we preclude kids. Fair point?
Absolutely.
When you make the act, in order to be competitive, it's costly. Fair point?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And when we make it costly, it precludes kids and families. Fair point?
Yes.
And I would say, I don't think it does it to a significant degree. I'll be honest with you. I think people say it does, but I think in the end, band directors always find a way to let a kid
over and
participate.
over and over again. Yes.
Yeah. And
over and over again. So yes. So in theory, it does. In action and practice, is it a high enough population that it actually does? That's a good question, because every educator I've ever heard says, we will find a way to make it work for your child. Just going to make sure that that's clear.
So if you were anointed commissioner of marching bands,
oh boy,
for the United States of America.
Well, I don't think that's a thing, but go ahead.
It's not.
No, I don't think so.
But
you know what? Can I have an inauguration?
Would you have a salary? We talked about this during a money episode.
Yeah.
Would you install an instructional salary cap? In other words, you get 2 drum techs, 2 guard techs, 1 brass, 1. You can only spend this much man hours on marching band. So
that obviously has to be prorated based on your band size, right? There has to be an equation for that to work for the amount of kids because you just talked about it yourself. Like there is a multiple of those things based on how many people are in your program. So short answer is yes, but there'd have to be a way to do those calculations. So short answer is yes, I absolutely would. It's just got to be done in a fair way.
Wouldn't it be an interesting world if we had all those things?
It really would.
How do you think it would? Do you think, okay, so I didn't do this. President of Marching Bands, Chris Flynn, decided that there are now going to be time guardrails, rehearsal guardrails. There are going to be length of show guardrails. There are going to be calendar guardrails.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a salary cap. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is, I don't direct your hate mail to Chris Flynn at bandadpodcast.com.
Sure.
Okay. Here's the question now. Do you think it would, those things would make the activity for kids better or worse? And do you think it would change the quality of the performance significantly better or worse? Go.
I think it makes it better for kids, ultimately, because if we're talking about everybody gets the same experience, which in a way I think makes the activity more university relatable. So I think there's a positive there. The amount of time that they spend on this thing is well defined in a way that allows them to still be productive in other ways in their lives. Again, these are high school kids. They're still very much battling an educational schedule and classes and what's next in their life in college and potentially trying to find employment. And so to have a definition of how much time this thing takes would be positive for sure. In terms of does it diminish the results? Again, the only real example I have of these things existing produces very successful bands right now. So no, not necessarily. I think it would take groups time to adjust to it, but that's on those groups, I guess, to understand. We talked about efficiency in a previous episode. They have to be efficient with that time that they have now. So it may take some time for some groups to navigate this new world, but that's kind of the issue. It's not that it's a detriment to the quality of performances, because like I said, that already exists today. Does it not? Again, we're going to harp back to Texas. They already have this. They produce very successful bands.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt their quality. That's for sure.
Correct. So, but they're used to this. They've lived in this world. They know how to work it. They know how to navigate it. So it's going to take some time, I think, for others to be able to respond to it. But ultimately, no, I don't think it takes away from the quality necessarily. Not only that, but I really feel like I'm thinking about something like, I'm trying to think of an equivalent of this, and I don't have a great one, but we have a college basketball tournament every year that's incredibly exciting, because you bring in schools from all over the place, all different sizes, that we feel somewhat not always compete on a level playing field, but it happens every year where you see basketball teams in this college tournament overtake teams that maybe are bigger in reputation, bigger in name, all that. If you had all of these people operating the same exact way, I can imagine somewhat of a bigger competition that, people could be more competitive against schools that maybe they wouldn't be now or discouraged now because we're all doing the same thing. Again, it still depends on the size of the business.
I've argued we should have all these guardrails and a salary cap in place. But think about this, folks. You may not be aware of this. This competitive marching band thing is a relatively new phenomenon.
Okay.
And so I would say, and people can say, well, we had a state champion back in 1952. But truly, the competitive circuit is mid-90s and beyond.
Yeah.
And where it really took off was when we started adding electronics and we started traveling, and that would be really early 2000s. So it's only in the last 25 years. Now, you would go to your local band day and they would give you a superior and a little banner and your band did great. But we do 12-hour Saturdays. We do camp. We bring in, body specialists. We spend a lot of budget. That's in my teaching lifetime. It's in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
And think of how far we've come. And don't think about like, oh, he's just talking about numbers, but think about if you took that same amount of growth of demand, that probably my last year teaching, we had 34 pages of drill. Most groups are in the high 80s now.
Yeah, gotcha.
We've tripled it.
Yeah.
I never did an all-day Saturday rehearsal once in my career.
Gotcha.
Now it's every Saturday.
Gotcha.
And, I was rehearsing maybe 7.5 hours a week. Now it's 8 to 10 to 12 for some groups if you're not in Texas. And so you have to almost ask yourself the question of, do we want to be educational or do we want to be competitive? Because I think we can all agree, if left to our own devices, Americans and the culture of competition will continue to expand its reach. It will get harder. We will rehearse more. It will cost more. And so,
right. But the same, yes, absolutely. That's true. But can you think of a lot of examples of athletics or sports or competition that don't have oversight? I can't think of.
No, they all do.
That's what I mean.
And I can't speak to other states. Arizona used to be under the Athletic Association.
Gotcha.
They just didn't do anything with us. And they would pass these laws about, let's say, drug testing your athletes. Well, we don't want to drug test band kids.
Gotcha.
And we're inside. So in the late 1990s, we broke away from the athletic organization. There's something to be said for some oversight and some boundaries.
I guess just to oversimplify things, that's just what pops in my mind is I can't think of another competitive activity, athletic sport that doesn't have some sort of oversight, some sort of rules committee, something to make sure that everybody's approaching it in a decently fair way. The other thing that comes to mind as we're talking about this, that's in the back of my mind is, as much as we're harping on these specific things, it's funny to me that there are places in this country where marching band still doesn't receive phys ed credits. I just saw, did you see Florida just approved this? Literally 2026, Florida just finally approved.
I think it's crazy that
marching band is now qualifying for physical education credits.
Okay. And do you know, folks, if it's not happening in your area, it should be happening here. Yeah. Do you know what it takes? Do you know what it takes to get a PE credit in the state of Arizona? What is it? How long do you have to do marching band for?
3 seasons.
That's correct. Because we built it under the basic philosophy that marching band doesn't start till the first day of school. And if it ends in early November, you have to do it 3 times to be a whole year. But it is because we pushed it so far 100%, back.
100% it's a semester. Yeah.
So we designed the phys ed credit on a non-competitive marching band philosophy.
Fair point.
It should be literally 2 years maximum.
So if anything, again, marching band kids are working harder to earn that PE credit because they're ultimately doing what is an extra semester of required PE compared to their high school peers. There you go. That's a fair point.
So are there any other guardrails you as a parent would, okay, here's a perfect example in Arizona, heat guardrails. Do you know athletics, AIA, can regulate whether a football team goes outside? And they did this past summer, but no one regulates the band programs and whether they can go outside, in our state at least.
Yeah, what's the... So I finally... you just stole my thunder. I was like, I finally learned about the wet bulb metric this year. That's the first time I've learned about it. It was just this past summer I learned about what the wet bulb metric was in Texas. And I mean, yeah. Now, the problem, though, is... Here's what I said. Not the problem, but the problem is... I feel like, yeah, we should be prepared in a way that our programs are not set up for, meaning that, okay, so it's too hot outside, let's go inside. But the things that they want to accomplish for their group are not capable inside because they don't have proper facilities. So then, yeah, are we saying it's okay just to throw out that time completely? Like, are we asking people to adapt on the fly because they don't know what the weather is that day? That's the challenge. I know our challenge is facility.
They don't have a football field inside, but the football teams were told, you can't practice outside these 3 days. It's just simply too hot. So go in a gym and do a walkthrough, go lift weights, go figure it out, but you're not going outside.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I don't really have a good answer for that one. I mean, there is a line where it is very, very, very warm. And I think that, again, I've seen, because we're using Arizona as the example because it's most prevalent here, I think, more than anywhere. Obviously, Texas has, their own rules for it. But I do feel like at least I can say our educators have done a good job to try and adapt to it having as minimal impact as possible on our kids.
I'm not trying to be critical.
But at the same time, again, I come from New England. The best part about the Patriots were back on the day, they practiced in the Buffalo too. You practice in the snow. How are you going to prepare for conditions if you don't prepare for conditions? You know what I'm saying? Like, so I don't know. I guess I see both sides. I can see both sides. I mean, you're building character by putting them out there for. And
there's something to be said. In order to get to it, you got to go through it.
Right.
Listen,
absolutely.
I'm not. And we said at the beginning, there's a mythical line in the sand. We don't know where it is. Is it 99 degrees? Is it 100? Is it 42 pages of drill or 43 pages of drill? Is August 1st the date or is it July 3rd? There's going to be no clear answer. But it sounds like we agree.
This is that book that we have to write, though. We have to write the book about analytics that define all these things for marching band, because it exists. We could come up with something.
Oh, we absolutely could.
We just need the data.
So it sounds like we're in agreement that boundaries and guardrails would be a good idea. We've agreed on money. We've agreed on time.
I would agree.
We've agreed on start date.
Yes.
We would agree on weather conditions, whether it be 10 below or 110 above. Are there any other? We've agreed on length of show. Are there any other guardrails? We've agreed on budget, that there would be a salary cap.
Rehearsal hours.
Are there any other guardrails that you would put in?
I might have to think about that a little bit more before being able to come up with something directly on the spot itself. Rehearsal hours would have to pertain to, because again, the other thing is, do I want people that are not participating in marching band to feel like marching band's intruding on their educational opportunity? And I do not. Meaning rehearsal hours leaking into like the school day or something, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but so they do that in Texas. They rehearse the music during the day.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They're allowed 8 hours outside of the school day, and they use that for visual and putting it together. So
again, that's the kind of thing that I don't know. I'm speaking more of if I'm a non-marching band parent, what are the things I'm looking at in terms of the way that this thing is intrusive to my child's learning?
Well, and just so you know, the downside of that Texas approach, because it's part of the school day, every kid is in marching band. And so you don't get a choice. You drop band. If you're not going to do marching band, I'm sure there are exceptions where you're the quarterback or you're the this, but in general, one of the reasons they have the numbers they do is, and we do the music during the day. So if you're going to be in a band class, you're going to be in the marching band.
I'd be curious about to hear from other parents around the country, really. What requirements do your programs have? So for us, it's kind of the other way around. If you're going to do marching band, the ask is that you be in a concert.
That's correct.
Right? Which, based on what you just said, in terms of the way that it does overlap and you do rehearse music during the day, well, it makes sense because then you're in your concert ensemble, probably also rehearsing marching band music at the same time, right? So there's probably overlap there. But I'd be curious around the country, both ways. Like, do you have requirements? Are you forced to do marching band in a way if you're going to be in band in general? And just like us, if you are going to do marching band, are you being asked to or required to be in other ensembles as well? So give us some feedback. I'm curious.
Yeah, and I think it's a great question if you're listening at home, is to ask yourself, do I agree with guardrails? Do I believe they would make the activity better or worse? And what guardrails, other than what we've mentioned, would you be in favor of?
Yeah, I'd love to hear some additional ideas. Yeah,
I'd love to hear some people's feedback.
Because listen, when I become president, folks, I promise I'll be diplomatic and I will listen to your ideas.
You're gonna build yourself a big ballroom.
Give me some time.
Yeah, I would for my marching band to rehearse.
Build my own. I'm not going to redo somebody else's. But
it's not going to be a ballroom. It's going to be a practice facility so we can rehearse in the air conditioning.
I'm jealous of. There are those of you out there that already have such facilities, and that's very nice. And I'm very jealous of you for that. But let me ask you a question that's got give just for the antithesis because we do agree on this. Give me the devil's advocate. Why wouldn't we? What would be the reason that we wouldn't want guardrails?
I think some would argue about it's none of your business how I run my program.
Okay.
I think some would argue that guardrails might limit the creativity of the activity. I know of a program, and they do indoor winds, and I asked why, and they said because we wouldn't survive in marching band without this.
That makes sense.
Where I look at it is it's an intrusion into building musical skills. They look at it and say, no, this is how we build musical skills.
An extension, yeah.
Or you could even make the argument because it's better than the alternative, which is kids are doing nothing. The alternative argument would be if we're not doing band camp on July 5th, then what is the kid doing?
We're back to the idle hands. Yeah. And there's something to be said for that. Is there not?
There absolutely is. There is. I think I look at marching band like I look at gun control, Chris. I really do. In that I think 85% of people agree on basic common sense laws for gun control.
Right.
I believe 85% of listeners believe in some common sense guardrails for the activity. But I just think getting the political momentum and will to get it done is just hard because you're talking about boards of directors of groups that they meet once a month. They're running their own freaking band program.
Right.
They've got their own problems to deal with. They're volunteering on this board. And now they're going to tell everyone else how they should run their program. Well, you need to listen to them and survey them, and you need to meet with them and think through the logistics. And it's a
lot. No, that's a lot. And it is a lot to ask of those people. So for the UI, do you know how that works in UIL? Since that's really our only example, is it still volunteers and educators?
No, UIL it's first of all, UIL, University Interscholastic League, applies to every competitive activity, speech and debate, drama, athletics, band. And they are fully staffed. I mean, there are full-time employees who run all this and staff it all. And they have full-time employees just in the area of music, making sure the region sites are booked. And all that's professionally managed.
Gotcha.
And they can do that because they have the size, the sheer scope, and they're funded by the State Department of Education. So they are staffed and prepared to do that. They're not volunteer position. Now, you have region coordinators that are volunteers and they're band directors during the day and volunteering at night and solo and ensemble, but the structure is run by people. That's their full-time job.
Gotcha. And again, I think that it just, some of these conversations I think will be somewhat regional, just even in terms of,
absolutely.
Again, it's your point. In Arizona, for our band, we're basically raising all the money it takes to operate. It's not that the school may not throw them a bone to maybe buy an instrument a year or something, right? Like there is something to be said, but the majority of what it takes for us to function our program comes from fundraising, and it comes from the band parents themselves and those in the activity and all that fun stuff. There are maybe other places where there is funding that exists for the arts and enrolling in activity. So we understand. I don't want to be naive to think that, again, it's just one. Because I think to have some people think we oversimplify things and just kind of see things one way, but it is different and it depends on where you are. But I think overall, there is a positive to be said for, again, if we're going to continue to be competitive, there has to be some structure to it. I think it only makes sense. Let
us know what you think, folks. Where that line in the sand is, has your group crossed it, do you think? What line did they cross and what guardrails would you put in? Reach out to us on how they do that, Chris.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Scott. The best way to reach out to us and have a conversation is email. So it's feedback@banddadspodcast.com. Shoot us an email. We both reply to messages and have conversations and engage in those things with our listeners. So please send us an email. That's the best way to do it. If you do have just a comment that you really don't want to have a discussion about necessarily, but just want to share feedback, in every episode description, there's a link that says send us a text. You can click on that link. It opens up your messaging app on your phone. It's a one-way message. Again, we can't reply to it. We don't know who you are. It gives us an idea what part of the country you're from, but that's it. So you can share, we require PE. I don't know. If you just have some comment or some feedback about the show in general, just you can send it there as well. We do have social media that you can engage with us on as well. But if you really want to give feedback, especially something that we can talk to you about, potentially bring back into the show as well, send us an email, feedback@banddadspodcast.com. That's the best way to do it. So yeah, I'd love to hear. I'm really, really curious just because I know how I feel, but I would love to see if other people have more tangible things that apply to this conversation than I do.
It's going to be interesting for sure.
Yeah.
I'm Scott Lang.
Chris Flynn.
And we're the
Band Dads. Thanks, folks. We'll see you next time.
Band Dads on 3. 1, 2, 3, Band Dads!
The Band Dads are a proud partner of Booster Hub. Simplify your Booster Club's management with Booster Hub's all-in-one tools. Find out more and get your free trial started by visiting boosterhub.com. Band Dads Podcast is a Five Deuce Media production. For more information, please visit fivedeucemedia.com. For more information on Scott Lang leadership and solutions for music education, please visit scottlang.net.